Le commerce international fait partie de la solution et non du problème.
It is essential that the monitoring function of the WTO is used better to know what countries are actually doing.
There's only so much the WTO can do because there are deep divisions in the world today.
We miss a debate about what sort of trade we want to recover and to become climate neutral. COVID shows that the politics of scarcity are very ugly, and that's why you need a rules-based system, but you also need to prevent those situations where you enter a scarcity scenario where it's either you getting it or I getting it.
COVID should have been a unifying experience for all of mankind. It is a challenge confronting all of mankind, but the opposite has happened. It has divided us further, and that's very troubling. There's only so much the WTO can do because there are deep divisions in the world today.
Aux sceptiques, je souhaite rappeler que le commerce international fait partie de la solution et non du problème. En effet, aucun pays n'est en mesure de produire seul les biens et les services dont il a besoin pour affronter une telle pandémie. Bien au contraire, les restrictions commerciales imposées au début de la crise sanitaire ont contribué à aggraver la situation.
The WTO should be the linchpin of transparency about the measures that are being taken in the context of the crisis. And I was disappointed to see that in the beginning of the crisis, it was think tanks that stepped up to the plate and ensured transparency. Then the WTO caught up, but I think it is essential that the monitoring function of the WTO is used better to know what countries are actually doing.
I also agree with DG Wyant has said that WTO should do a better job in monitoring the pandemic-related measures to make sure that every member keeps their market open, and the pandemic-related measures should be transparent, proportionate, and targeted.
We agree that any trade emergency measures that have been taken in the crisis should be temporary and proportionate and transparent, and we have notified what we have done to the WTO.
COVID has demonstrated that the WTO has a role to play in global economic management, and that the extent of global economic interdependence overrides the pursuit of narrow national interests in a multilateral trading system.
In the post-recovery, we see a lot of debate on trade, in my view, quite polarized, certainly where I am in Brussels, where you oscillate between people you are speaking with people say deglobalization is the way forward as part of the recovery, and others saying it's even more liberalization. Within that, we miss a debate about what sort of trade we want to recover and to become climate neutral.
Are we going to go into some sort of process of deglobalization, drawing on the lessons of the pandemic? Now, I don't think this would respond to an upsurge of, can I say, grassroots anti-globalization sentiment. I think it would be much more a higher level. How can we make globalization more secure and more resilient to the type of external shock that the pandemic has represented?
The pandemic may be an opportunity to demonstrate that globalization may actually benefit all the people on the planet if the nations of the world respond properly to the pandemic. And that is, if we keep our supply chains open so that medical supplies and equipment and vaccines as they're needed can flow around the world to where they are needed, the pandemic will only be defeated if we defeat it globally around the world.